Good morning, everybody. So I put out a video about a week ago saying why I was going to vote for Keir Starmer in the election, but now I'm starting to have doubts about all that. And the reason why I'm having doubts about that is, of course, because the Labour Party seem to have no intention of legalising cannabis. And I know it seems like a trivial point. I know it seems like something that I get hung up on, this issue of legalising cannabis, but it really is an incredibly important thing. It would reduce crime, it would reduce hospitalizations, it would save the country an enormous amount of money, it would remove this black market entirely and give us something new to tax. It would make our country more like the Netherlands, where they have better rates of or lower rates of crime, better rates of performance in education, better health statistics, and all these sorts of things. And it does come down to things like the legalization of cannabis, I'm afraid to say. It does come down to the fact that it gives you more money for public services. It saves money on public services as well, crucially. So Labour's manifesto got leaked not so long ago, and Keir Starmer is planning on building more prisons apparently and being tough on crime. And whether or not that's just a stratagem to win votes or not, I'm not certain. It must be on a level of stratagem to win votes. It is no other way it could be in his manifesto if not for that reason. That's why political manifestos are written in the first place. Political parties attune the policies that they plan to pursue on the basis that people are going to vote for given things and not vote for other things. And the reason why I think that they're not pursuing cannabis legalization is that it's an unpopular policy among lots of people. Lots of people on the centre right hate the idea. People on the far right despise the idea. Would sooner see cannabis raised to a Class A drug, and hence it's an unpopular policy for people who don't use cannabis. Um, However, the benefits that could be derived from legalization of cannabis are myriad, and could dramatically improve this country if we had that. But I watched this report the other day, for instance, about this 12-year-old kid who was going around with a machete in Wolverhampton, and he sliced up this 19-year-old um, migrant kid, and he killed him. He murdered this 19-year-old. And I'm just tempted to say, like, if you had legalized cannabis, you would remove this entire gang culture that we have on the streets at the moment, whereby people, the poorest people in the country, mostly young people, are dealing cannabis just to get money, and you remove the necessity for that entirely. You have nothing like that in the Netherlands. You have nothing like that probably in Canada, in Spain, Portugal, places where it's legal, Germany. There were far lower rates of crime and far fewer of these horrific instances of people murdering or knife crime on the streets. Far fewer instances of things like that happening. But no, it's just it continues. It continues to worsen. The policies get more draconian, the drugs get more dangerous, which is another excellent reason for legalizing cannabis. That the more illegal you make drugs, and you can look comparatively at economies like Russia, for instance, where the laws are very very harsh, very very draconian, and the drugs, as get increasingly more dangerous and more addictive and everything else as the laws become more draconian. People complain that the cannabis you were smoking today is this skunk stuff that's not the same cannabis you were smoking years ago, and so on. It's like, well, if you were to make it legal, you would give people a plethora of options whereby they can choose lower strength cannabis if they want to, and generally introduce quality controls over products being sold in whatever kind of coffee shop system or system of dispensaries that it ends up being, and you can control the strength of it that way. Whereas now that it's a Class B drug in England, we have uh, phenomena such as spice emerging on the streets, which is not cannabis at all. It's a green plant matter of some kind flocked with synthetic cannabinoids, and that leads probably reliably to psychosis, puts an increasing amount of strain on the health system and the mental health system in particular. And yeah, all these things compound, build up, cost the country inordinate sums of money. And I'm disappointed in Labour again because like their approach to the health system seems to be just to throw more money at it. Still, they seem to have no recourse to no other kind of strategy of dealing with the overburdened NHS and the waiting lists and everything else, other than just throwing money at it. Why not start by docking the salaries of NHS managers who have these enormous bloated pay packets, diverting the rest of that into hiring essential staff members who are needed on hospital wards and so on, and bringing waiting lists down that way? Why not try managing it better and more effectively? I don't know, but I mean, the cannabis issue is like, it's just one thing, really. It's one thing out of many things. It's not going to lead to a utopia overnight if we were to legalise cannabis. Just saying that there's a plethora of excellent reasons for doing so. We could have crops of hemp more effectively. We could be using the hemp for fuel, for textiles, for building materials, for livestock feed, for all these amazing things which we can use that crop for. And simultaneously, we could be using it as carbon capture technology, green technology to capture CO2 from the environment, and keep up with our agreements under the Paris Agreement for climate change, which we've now pulled out of, but nonetheless, we would be achieving that kind of status of net zero emissions, or a certain amount of carbon captured per year, but I can't remember offhand right at the moment. But yeah, nonetheless, I mean, it reflects a more liberal, open, tolerant, progressive society, one where cannabis is legal, as opposed to one where it's more draconian, authoritarian, oppressive, those things, veering more towards a totalitarian system of governance, such as you have in Russia, such as you have in certain parts of the United States, such as you have in China and Indonesia, and all these places that have extremely regressive, repressive drug laws. And like the problems in people's lives on a street level is caused by drugs at a very tangible, very palpable way. And the problem there on the streets clearly is drug taking, and that it's a big problem for the poorest people in our society. And the more draconian you make drug policy, the more dangerous drugs get, the more drug deaths you have. Policies of decriminalisation bring rates of use down. New people don't take drugs or are less enticed into taking drugs because no black market economy for drugs exists. And yeah, well, moreover, really, it's less tantalising to the youth if it's legal. For one thing, it's less an act of rebellion. It's less a kind of forbidden fruit sort of thing if you make drugs legal. So, like, really, when it comes to tackling these social issues which affect the most vulnerable people in our society, the Labour Party seem to be doing very little at that kind of immediate and street level kind of level about that problem. They don't seem to be, they seem too naive when it comes to issues that affect people on that level, to craft effective policies for dealing with it, for raising up the most vulnerable people in our society, and tolerating drug use and ensuring that people, if they're going to use drugs, get supplies of safer drugs to use in the first place, that it's not, flocked with any synthetic cannabinoids, that their cocaine isn't cut with anything horrendous, that if they're going to use heroin, they're at least using heroin, say, and not fentanyl or, God forbid, crocodile or anything like that. And these efforts at policing, and Keir Starmer says we'll employ 13,000 new police officers on our streets. Like, the problem isn't that we don't have enough police officers. It's not just another throw money at it sort of problem and expect the problems to go away. Or we'll build more prisons. That was in his manifesto as well. It's like, we don't need more prisons. We need people out of prisons because they're in there pointlessly on drug offences. We need to start pardoning drug criminals and decriminalising drugs, right? And just saying that people use drugs, people are always going to use drugs. The best that we can hope for is to ensure that they have safer supplies of drugs, etc., bring death rates down, bring rates of addiction down, bring rates of new users coming on stream down. So if you look at the native Dutch population, far fewer native Dutch people actually use cannabis than we do here in the United Kingdom. We use it more frequently here. And consequently we suffer to a far greater extent from mental health problems such as psychosis and all these other things that also cost the government lots of money. So it's a somewhat futile endeavour when it comes to policy making, and the futility of it is as it ought to be as clear as day to anyone, that the war on drugs has been a complete failure. It's ruined the lives of inordinate numbers of people rather than doing what it was ostensibly meant to do, which is benefit people's lives in some way and prevent drug use and prevent drug addiction and crime and all this sort of stuff that goes along with that. And really, for fuck's sake, why can I not have a couple of plants in my house? Because it's a magical plant that gets you high. Like, I can have poisonous plants if I want to. I can grow poisons. I can grow lily of the valley. And as I understand it, that's perfectly legal. But I can't do something that augments my mind, something that frankly is a safe form of pleasure for me, that benefits me no end with mental health and so on. And generally has lots of wonderful attributes. Why can't I grow such an organism in my flat or house or whatever I have? Is ludicrous. It's racist. It's anti-Semitic. It's against the tenets of the Bible, of Genesis, where God says in the Garden of Eden that we're given every green plant and incense-bearing tree or what have you, and then that's reiterated after the flood, when we're granted the right to eat animals by the Almighty. It's shameful, shambolic, ridiculous, retrogressive, not likely to work ever. But for whatever reason it is, and particularly on the right wing, and particularly among ostensible Christians or whatever, most of whom haven't read the Bible at all, it seems, or who don't think about scripture ever in crafting their decisions and consider themselves right on the political spectrum, and conservative voters and old people as well. Who despise cannabis and hate drugs and are terrified of drugs, right? That it should all be banned, it should all be illegal, or it should be more illegal so that people are more incentivized to not take it, which clearly doesn't work. But nonetheless, and then you have like evil worm-like creatures from the Conservative Party who want to make cannabis a Class A drug next, and there's like police types who worm their way into politics, advocating policies such as that, probably because it'll get more money for the police somehow. Different elements of the state, government, fighting over bits of cash that connect to certain decisions made in policy. It can't be like this. You need the policy to be effective. Decriminalisation works, legalisation works, it improves societies. Wherever it's been tried, it makes life better for people. It makes life better for the millions of people who rely on cannabis for medical reasons. It makes life at a street level better, safer. It gives people more money. I mean, if you just allow people to make a bit of money on the side here and there selling buds, like, really, what is the problem with that? I mean, maybe have a licensing infrastructure for it, maybe not. Maybe just allow people to sell each other a bit of weed here and there. I mean, for fuck's sake. It's a plant, it makes people more benign, happier. It makes people less inclined to violent actions, which is the same thing as benign. So you have a more peaceful, tolerant society. I mean, I'm tempted, I swear that the Second World War and the First World War, these two extraordinarily violent wars, those only occurred after we started making drugs illegal. I swear there's a connection there between that and a certain empire, our empire, trying to dominate the global trade in heroin, morphine and cocaine, and introducing the 1912 International Opium Convention. I'm sure that gave rise to World War I, but there we go. And it's very disappointing, discouraging to see no political parties really, or no major political parties taking these policies, these ideas, such as decriminalisation, legalisation of cannabis and other drugs, and running with them. I mean, in fairness to Tony Blair, he did lower cannabis from a Class B to a Class C drug, and that did make cannabis safer, and it did work at the time, and also made magic mushrooms, psilocybin mushrooms, legal, I think, in their fresh form at least. Which was, a great achievement, and then made them illegal again, unfortunately. And Gordon Brown, unfortunately, made cannabis a Class B drug during his brief and ignominious tenure as Prime Minister. And, it's, I don't know, it's making the issue of drugs a kind of a political football, isn't it? Bandied about between the Conservative Party and the Labour Party and the House of Commons, and kind of Brown making cannabis a Class B drug as a kind of fuck you, is it, to the Conservative Party, who were basing their campaign at the time on legalising cannabis ostensibly, which they basically didn't do. But yeah, that's a story for another video. So this is one policy that's particularly, but it's not cannabis, it's just tobacco. There's one policy that is particularly close to my heart, something that I know would improve people's lives, would make this country safer, more prosperous, etc., and would be better for people here if cannabis were legal, if drugs were decriminalised or legalised. But then again, the only party really seeming to do that is the Green Party, so maybe I should vote Green, and I'm tempted to do that now. Then again, there's little point voting Green in the constituency where I live at the moment, which is a secure Conservative seat, and therefore maybe I should tactically vote Labour just to switch this to a Labour constituency, hopefully, and ensure that the Labour Party gets in and the Conservative Party don't, because the Labour Party, given their track record under Blair, are frankly more likely to legalise cannabis, or at least downgrade it to a Class C drug again. I don't know, ladies and gentlemen, but it's disappointing not to see Keir Starmer openly pursue that sort of agenda. But then again, it's understandable why he isn't, because loads and loads of the voting populace hate the idea of legalising cannabis because they are morons. But there we go. Thank you for watching. I love you lots. Bye.